Hello, my name's David. I'm an environment artist, and here we are yet again in Crimson Desert. Not Crimson Dawn, as I occasionally keep accidentally calling it. It's occupying most of my attention at the moment because it's so enjoyable and it's just full of stuff, isn't it? It's just there's so much stuff to talk about in it because it's an intensely interesting game with all sorts of interesting technology going on as well. It's like a gold mine of goodness. So today we're gonna be taking a look not at the seawater. I must apologise. We're not doing seawater yet. I'm teasing you with that, and I just want to look at more coastlines before I get really into that. I've seen quite a bit of coastline, but I want to see more, and I want to see what variety we've got. So be patient, and it will come. Okay. So what today? It's a bit more of a sort of world designy sort of thing, really. Focusing on some smaller rivers or streams, you might say, or brooks or tiny little rivulets, whatever. I keep getting pulled up by people, because I call them all rivers. It's my catch-all name for watercourses, okay? So, it might be a stream and I might call it a river. It's fine, that's my catch-all term. So, some smaller rivers, and they're out of the way. And I want to show you the kind of levels of detail and the compromises that have to be made in every open world landscape of any size. It's the design is such that developers will focus detail on the areas that they know are going to get most attention. So really that means the start of the game. The opening area is going to get all the attention and all the detail and lots of polish. And they know that probably only a fraction of people will get to the end of that game. And they probably won't explore all the nooks and crannies and all that kind of, if you will, filler area in a big open world. For want of a better term, I mean, it's not really filler, is it? But you need to put stuff everywhere in a big open world, don't you? You need to fill it with things and stuff. And so I've, in my wanderings, I've discovered a few kind of little rivulets or streams coming down from some cliffs and stuff. And they're quite instructive in how a developer allocates resources and time and detail compared to the river that I did in a video I did a couple of weeks ago. Up there, I'll put a link to it, the river video. Okay, so that's a really polished river that's in the sort of starting area, and these ones are very much out of the way. So before we get into that though, I want to thank channel members. As usual, thank you very much. There you all are. We've had a few more lately. Welcome. Thanks very much. I really appreciate your support. It makes a big difference. And it's wonderful to have you along. We have the private Discord, so maybe I'll see you there. And thank you again. So, let's get on with it, right? So, here we are, up high in this rather wonderful area. We're at dawn. The sun has just risen. Was it 5:51 a.m.? I'm an early riser. And in these rather wonderful, amazing sort of things in the sky. Very Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, isn't it? Very much. But it's like Tears of the Kingdom that's grown up, isn't it? Yeah. And just this wonderful view of the world. I absolutely love it. And, as big as this world is, I kind of want to go to those islands. I can't help myself, but that's outside the playable area, I presume, and I'm pretty sure it is. But, you can't show me some islands on the horizon without me wanting to go to them. So, right, without further ado, let's go, right? So, we're going down here. Let me show you on the map where we're going to be going. So, I put a little marker there. We're in the abyss up here. But, bloom, there we go. So much that I've yet to explore. It's such a great feeling knowing that I've got all of that stuff yet to explore. I love it. But you can see where I've been kind of here, can't you? A lot of it's focused on rivers, isn't it? As someone observed not long ago. But, I've been sending my tendrils of exploration out. And you can see the coastal areas that I've been to along here. Shipwreck Shore and this sort of little town here. And some shipwrecks and stuff all along there. Really nice. And I went over there. But we're going to go here, right? So here's Hanan Castle, starting area. That's the initial river that I looked at. And in my wanderings through the storyline, I was just traversing along here, and they're not on the map. They're so small, but they run from left to right down here, and I thought they would be quite interesting. So let's go. Let's go down there, and we'll go top speed. I mean, look at that! Isn't it great? I love this sort of skydiving business that we get to do, and we've got our magical kind of bird parachute thing, haven't we? Great. And it's interesting, isn't it, that we get here and then we hit a sort of loading screen, which is quite cleverly done, I think. You know, it does completely obscure the screen for a sec while new stuff gets loaded in, basically. And we see it all here. We are down here, not too far away. So, falling down. And here we are. I think we'll start higher up, actually. So, zoom, zoom, zoom. Go. Whoa. Sorry, Cliff has a slightly rough landing there. So, yeah, I know the trees, the wind, you know, everyone mentions the trees and the wind, don't they? And I fully agree, it's too much. Most games get it wrong, don't they? It's just, there's a lot of visual noise going on when you get into these forests, isn't it? It's almost like static. There's so much like buzz. And I do wish that we could tone that down. I'm kind of hoping that someone's going to mod it so that we can, you know, sort of sort it out a bit. So we've got this little stream here. Oh, my dog as well. I have dog, Brown Dog. I'd like to rename Brown Dog and give him a good old doggy name, but it seems to be he's just Brown Dog for now. But a very useful fellow he is. He picks things up for me. Great. Love having a dog in a game. So, yeah, rivers. Right, these are small rivers. Very small rivers. So, it's obvious that this river has had less time spent on it. If you look, again, I wish I could get rid of all the trees for this and just show landscape, because that would be very, very useful. But I was very impressed with the construction of the first river I looked at in that video, 2 videos ago, I think it was. You know, it was just really well made. You know, it was quite apart from water. It was just constructed really well. It was modelled really well, like a river would be. You know, a very much a subtractive approach for rivers. You know, you want to be cutting into the landscape. You don't want to be putting stuff on top of a landscape for a river, because a river is erosive. It goes down through the landscape. It cuts through it and pulls material down with the water, you know. And very often you see rivers which it's somewhat additive. And it's clear that really they've just had the base terrain. And they've like gone, right, we need a river here, right, plonk it on top. And, you know, they build up the edges with rocks usually, and then the water sort of sits in, and the edges are hidden by the rocks. But you can see it kind of, in profile, it kind of humps over with all the terrain. And this river is a little bit like that. So, you know, it's really obvious that this river had a lot less attention, because it's way out of the way. You know, it's kind of in a out of the way corner of the map, that it might not get that much attention. And so, you know, they've smartly allocated resources, Pearl Abyss, I think, because in a world this big, which is, I mean, it has the impression, and it feels absolutely huge, it looks huge to me, and you've got to focus your attention, you've got to focus your developers on areas that matter most. And so you can't be lavishing so much attention on tiny little out of the way streams that, you know, some people might never see this stream. You know, a lot of people just do the missions and, you know, go back and forth, do the missions, and once they've finished the storyline, then it's bish bosh done. So, you know, you've got to smartly do this. I mean, Assassin's Creed Shadows did this in a big way. You know, there's some nice rivers, but once you got to out of the way areas, there's some blooming awful bits. You know, and you can clearly see that it's like they don't really expect many people to even get there. So, you know, it's the nature of open world game design, is that you've got to be smart about what you put your attention on. And, you know, it'd be nice if every bit of the landscape, you know, had as much attention to it as every other bit. But it's just, you know, you've got to be real about it. If you're a developer, you've got to be smart about where you put your attention. And that's just a fact of life. and it always will be, I expect. So what they've done really, they've put loads of rocks. This is like a boulder field, and it hides it really well, I think. It's a good way to do it, but you can see. So let's look at all this stuff. The rock is very much on top of the terrain. You see the terrain peeking through in bits like this, and where that grass is there, and you see we're coming down here. If all that veg wasn't in the way, you'd be able to see the terrain. Well, let's do Reshade Time. Reshade, super useful. All because of the trees, less useful than usual in this case, isn't it? But you can get a sense of the terrain here, and then you can get a sense of all that rock stuck on top of the terrain, and then the river water is nestled in amongst it. And for those people who always comment about that's the world normal, yeah, it's display depth and it's inferring the world normal. It's just a view mode. That's all. Edge detect on the depth buffer and reconstructs the world normal. But ignore that. Just forget about the colours. It's just useful to see the topology, isn't it? That's why I use it. I can see all the topology without the distraction of textures and stuff. And it's very helpful. Very, very helpful for this sort of stuff. I love it. There we are. I mean, for all that I'm not nitpicking, right? Don't get me wrong. As usual, I'm not nitpicking, saying, oh, look at this rubbish river. I'm not saying that. I'm pointing out world design philosophy in, open world games. As I keep saying, allocation of resources. And I'm just pointing out that some areas get more attention than others, and that's a fact. And for all that, though, this water, being a sim, is really blooming good. This is far better than any other river of this size I've seen in any other game. And there's been some debate, and I've had some interesting conversations with people swearing blind that it's pre-baked. It's just using a pre-baked flow map and all that. And, vertex displacement, stuff like that. And, I mean, it's a valid point. You could argue that. But we'll get to that in a bit, because there's a section on this river that I think is a dead giveaway for this being a live sim. And yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. But let's just have a look. We'll go into first person mode here. For your reference, right, I've turned off all upscaling. I'm not using ray reconstruction at all. No DLSS. This is completely native. And I'm running in 2K. 4K is a little bit much. Even for my nice computer, 5070 Ti, 64 gig RAM, i9 processor. And, 4K brings it down to like 40 frames a second. And I want to be at 60. Especially for content, I want to be at as high a frame rate as I can get, really. So that's why. And I think 2K is a fine way to do it, to be honest, I can barely tell the difference between 2K and 4K, and I'm using a 55-inch screen here. So, I'm happy. But, some people are more sensitive to it, aren't they? But let's look at the water, right? I mean, I can't help but look at this water. And again, this is another a point in it being a sim, to my mind, right? Because if you just look at the flow, it's really shallow. This is really shallow water. And they're using a shallow water equation solver for this. So, it excels at this sort of stuff. And hand authoring stuff like this is really difficult. And it's much more difficult than doing a deeper river. Because this water, obviously, the shallower it is, the more rocks it's got to go in and around and over. And, it's just really nice. You look at it, the flow there. I mean, a lot of people say it looks like syrup or something, or it's too slow, or it's too blobby. I would say, let's just be real for a sec here. This is not real life. This is not real water. Even using a live particle sim, you're not going to get it looking like a real river in the real world. We don't have that processing power for home use yet. If you had a massively high-end PC, right, a development PC, two 5090s, 256 gig of RAM, the best tech that our technology can do, you might get a pretty good-looking river that is somewhat close to real world, but it wouldn't be. It still wouldn't be. Water is amazingly complex when you look at its flows. Really, it's fractal in nature. It takes that larger pattern and it repeats and repeats all the way down. and you can be as complex as you like with water. And you know, with our current level of gaming technology, we're not even close to a realistic looking river, really, when you really pick at it. So yeah, it's, you know, it's going to flow. There's going to be parts where the flow, even on a sim, goes through rocks, because that's all to do with the resolution of your flow map that it's generating. You know, I mean, this is a flow map that's been generated on the fly with this sim. But it's not got like 16K resolution, you know, which is what you need to go in and around 100% with all these rocks. You know, and the smaller the river or stream, then the more that's going to happen. It's going to go through rocks. So, you know, let's just be realistic about it. And I mean, this is usually a thing that people who aren't really very tech savvy and maybe very casual gamers, perhaps, you know, I mean, I don't mean to sound condescending. You know, it's just that if you don't know, you don't know, do you? And that's fine. Uh, you know, and especially if you're not a developer and you just play games, there's things that you can't know. So, you know, I don't expect you to know. And this is why I'm saying this, you know, it's to make you realize that there's a limit to what we can expect for home gaming. And this, to me, is the pinnacle of what we have achieved so far, in that it's doing a really good job, even though it does go through some rocks. Sure, yeah, but let's be realistic. But look at it there. I mean, a really small stream, and look at it. Look at its form. It's no slopey ribbons in sight. No slopey ribbons at all. It's all behaving like real water would do. And I mean, some people say the flow looks really slow. And I mean, you could perhaps argue that. It looks pretty good to me. But I mean, maybe that's all down to your viscosity attributes for the sim. And thing is, I suspect what might be happening is that Pearl Abyss, you know, firstly they went for real world viscosity and ran the sim. And what they probably might have found is that the water's going all over the show. It's gushing everywhere, and it's just being a bit too uncontrolled because it's a simulation. It's not real life, yeah. And so you would find that if you increase the viscosity or the thickness, as it were, you will find that your water is a bit more cohesive as a whole, and it sort of sticks together more. You know, viscosity is how gloopy it is. So I'm feeling that, like, yeah, maybe it's a tad slow, you know. I could get behind that maybe, but that might well be Pearl Abyss just being, you know, a bit realistic about the water and making it more controllable. And so they might have just touched the viscosity up a little bit more. So, but I'm fine with that. But also, you know, if we reshade it again, I think what a lot of people see when you look at it like this, when it's opaque, the brain wants to see syrup because it's not transparent. You know, I really think that there is a large element of that people are looking at me in Reshade and going, well, that looks very gloopy, because, you know, the subconscious is telling them, well, it's opaque, looks quite viscous, you know, but once you pop it off and take it as a whole, to me, that feeling tends to go away. And look at this section here where we've got the agitation, you know, because it's gushing over here and it's going over a really shallow section of bumpy little rocks and stuff, and it's speeding up somewhat there, so it's getting more agitated. Agitation in terms of a water sim means foam, basically. So the more agitated it is, the more foamy you're getting. And that is a lovely little section, that. Because, you know, I've seen so many little streams and rivers, they do that. You know, they skitter across. Oh, that wood was doing something funky, wasn't it there? But it skitters across and it gets really thin and widens out a little bit, like this does, and you get that sort of more agitated feel to it. So another thing that people have been using as an argument against it being a live sim, and you know, live sim meaning that it's actually running right now and it's calculating flow like real time. So, you know, another thing is that it doesn't sort of look at the player's legs, right? So let's just stand Cliff in the water here, right? I mean, when he's moving, you know, he's affecting the flow. But when he stops moving, it doesn't split around his legs and it doesn't flow around them, right? I mean, that is not an argument against it not being real time, because with a water sim, you can tell the sim to observe or be aware of whatever you want, and you can tell it to not be aware of whatever you want as well. So, you know, the sim is obviously here. It disregards anything in the stream that isn't moving. And I mean, I'm willing to sort of concede maybe when you walk through it here, that might be something that's layered on top. It might be. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. None of us know, do we? So, you know, when people come in saying it's 100% this, now 100% it's pre-baked, 100% it's not a sim, you don't know that. I mean, I'm 95% certain that Pearl Abyss is telling us the truth, and I've no reason to disbelieve them at this point. And I wouldn't say I'm 100% on hardly anything. You know, birth, death, and taxes. That's the only things I'm 100% on in this life. I wouldn't say I'm 100% on anything. And I mean, frankly, if anyone comes in with "I'm 100% right, you're wrong" attitude, I'm immediately suspicious. So we don't know for 100%, and you can't know until Pearl Abyss actually tells. And to me, everything I've seen tells me that this is, you know, a live sim. Because let me show you a little very instructive section. You see, you know, you can tell that, as I said before, this river is less polished. I mean, you can tell, can't you? You can see it right here. But this part here is really interesting. Right, we're seeing the edge of the sim here. Can you see that stretching right there? Now, if I pop Reshade on, and even more instructive, if I pause so the sim resets, boop. So we're at the default state of the sim here. And if this isn't a sim, I will be amazed. This is a dead ringer for the default state of water particle simulation. You know, this, you can see the edge of the simulation volume in that straight edge there we see, and the surface of the water going down in a slopey ribbon, you know, to start off with, and that's filled with your particle volume. And so watch when I resume the sim, it settles, but it's still, you know, you've got to have an edge of the simulation, and usually the edge of the simulation is a volume defined by the riverbed and banks. And whenever I've done particle simulations, for me it's a Boolean operation of water surface or starting water surface and riverbed and banks, and then you can combine them like a union, and you end up with a volume that the particles can be within. And so you see there, that's the edge of the volume. You know, especially when I pause it again, there's your volume. And then as the simulation runs, particles start going, height data starts appearing, and you know, you can deform the surface of the water accordingly. So, you know, you can see that they've just not had the time to polish these river edges properly. And, you know, I mean, maybe they will at some point, I don't know. But, you know, it's great. I love seeing these telltale signs, because it's all information, isn't it? You know, it's all data points for analysis. And I was very pleased that I stumbled upon that. You know, it's a real tell. Let's get back to the old additive nature of it. You know, you can very much see here, this is where two streams meet here. And you can just see how it's built up, kind of these rock edges stuck on top of the landscape. And you got the river here. And when you look at this stream here, oh, look at Cliff there, he's balancing quite agilely, isn't he, along that, that log. Cool. But I didn't even mean to do that. And oh, check out Cliff's cape, by the way. I got to the point where I could do some dyeing of clothing, which is great. I love it how they're feeding us the systems as you go through the missions. It's brilliant. But yeah, anyway, I digress. You can see the water level is, I mean, it's about the same level as the terrain, or maybe slightly below it. Whereas, you know, in reality, this would be like much lower. Oh, I've got some rain. Do you know what? In about 20 hours of playing, this is only the second time I've had rain. Awesome. Right, I'm very pleased that we've got some rain. That's great. I was enjoying going out in a storm. Really nice. I think it's really good rain as well, isn't it? It's a pleasure to see it. Yeah. No, I mean, I've heard some people say that the rivers go up in the rain, but I mean, because I've had so little observation of rain, I don't actually know whether it is or not. I mean, maybe let's keep an eye on it, eh? Let's have a look. But while we're still going on about rivers and stuff, isn't it? Rivers part two today, isn't it? But let's just look at another data point for flowing, right? I've really been looking at these flows as carefully as I can. And it usually helps if you find a rock that's only just like poking out the surface. And I don't see any looping of the flows in all this lot. I mean, given the nature of a simulation, you're going to get similar patterns given the topology and the incline and the attributes that those particles are given. They're going to go flow down, flow around stuff, and they're going to behave in a similar flow pattern. But they're not going to do an identical flow pattern. Particles going to move how they want in that situation. And even though, you get what looks like a fairly repetitious pattern, if you look really closely, I don't see any looping. And I look at like the tips of rocks that are coming out of the stream and the flows that go around it. And if you look, if you stare at it like for about 5 or 10 minutes, which I won't make you do, but I would advise you to run that test. And it is difficult to tell, but I don't see any repeating loops as far as I've observed, even though it's not that easy to sort of look at it like that. But to me, that's another data point that it's a real-time sim running. I know. So, yeah. But let's go back on normal. So, what do you think? Do you think the water has gone up? I don't think it has. I mean, that would be a nice touch, wouldn't it? A la Death Stranding 2, that sort of thing. But, oh, by the way, if you're a firm believer in Death Stranding 2's rivers being better than Crimson Desert, check out the Slopey Ribbons. It's good. They're good rivers. They're really nicely modelled and stuff. But again, they get the structure of the watercourse wrong, where Crimson Desert gets it all right generally. Death Stranding 2, I was disappointed to see. I love that game. That's one of my favourite ever games. But as far as critique of a river, yeah, Slopey Ribbons, Slopey Ribbon time. But yeah, so look at all that. Look at all that shape to the water. That's great, isn't it? So yeah, I think that's about my main points conveyed. That sometimes you've got to accept it, especially if you're developing some sort of open world game. And I know a number of my viewers, your developers, don't even try to put the same level of detail off the beaten path as you are in your well-travelled or especially starting areas or areas on the critical path of your storyline and missions. Because, if you've got time later on, which you want, you can come back and do it, but you won't. Guarantee it. So you've got to be smart about where you put your effort and be realistic of what you can do. And that will really help you in the long run. And you just got to accept that you can't polish everything. Even though a lot of gamers will want you to and expect you to and complain about it when you don't, so long as you get the main areas done to the best of your ability, the critical path, focus on that. And then do what you can later on in a polished pass. Yeah. So again, you see this river here. Have you noticed? Both of those rivers, they join and then they disappear. So that's another thing about like these rivers were like, yeah, we really want some rivers here, but we ain't got that much time to do it. And gone. Rivers are gone, haven't they? And they do come back to a certain extent down there. But, you can always argue that these go down into, I guess this is like a big sort of talus slope, isn't it? With really big boulders and stuff. And sometimes rivers do that. They do disappear. because there's massive boulders underneath all this and plenty of room for a watercourse to go down underneath the topsoil, because there's lots of gaps, and then they can reappear over there. So, you know, there's always that as well. Geology is full of edge cases. So, you know, I'll give them a pass for that. But yeah, so this interesting area. So let me just show you on the map again where we are. The Witchwoods. Lovely. So, a pleasure being back in Crimson Desert and playing it every chance I get because I love it so much. And thank you for joining me. Appreciate you. And take it easy. I'll see you in another video at some point. Maybe it'll be the coastal waves then. All right. So, bye-bye.